Greetings, welcome back to my channel. I just read a fantastic book by Nikolas Schreck, The Satanic Screen. So, yeah, I guess first off, in terms of the satanic, if you're interested in that, the introduction is gold in terms of really spelling out a proper history and the proper place of Satan or the Satans from the Old Testament, and then goes into a lot of the what Schreck sees as major problems with contemporary Satanism, a lot of unnecessary confusion from his point of view. And I think it's a strong critique. We don't want more confusion and more sloppiness when we're dealing with mysticism. So the intro would be quite a challenge to Luciferians, to Levians. So that alone is quite it makes the book worthwhile, in my view. Now, I guess what I would say is the book is sort of a mix of scholarly with pop movie critique, and it goes through from the beginnings of cinema and traces the satanic thread from the very inceptions of this magic lantern to today. It picks up themes and connects movies and the developments of the satanic through the lens of culture, as culture develops and changes, like from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s onward, how people's views of Satan change. One thing that kind of stood out for me was how by the 90s, 2000s, instead of the Christian church being sort of the solution to Satan, the Savior, Jesus, it goes to sort of more New Age. So you've got these the demonic, and what battles the demonic is not the Catholic Church anymore, or sort of Christians. It's more the New Age. So observations like that, I think, were through the book, are very pertinent and interesting. Criticisms. So a big problem I have personally with the book, and I've kind of like, am I right? Am I wrong? I think I'm right. So, for example, he might spend 15 pages on a soft porn B-Z movie, and he spent maybe 5 pages on The Exorcist, which he dismisses. And it's really funny. Another person who dismissed The Exorcist in the same sort of vein was in my interview with Dr. Aquino, He's like, oh, the devil, your mother sucks cocks in hell. Can't the devil think of something better to say? And Nikolas is sort of on that same wavelength, and he thought the movie was more of a comedy, which the Zodiac Killer had said also. I totally disagree with this critique, and I think a movie that influential, that powerful, that successful deserved more than those few pages. And was he being a bit of a contrarian for that? If all the people like it, it's no good. I suspect maybe a little bit. And just to push back on Nikolas on The Exorcist, exorcisms, that's what people do when they're supposedly possessed, at least through the Catholic Church. Just the swearing, the meaninglessness. It's not like, let's gather around and write down these fascinating things the demon says. This is a random, this is a dehumanization. This is the shadow. Yes, sexuality coming through. I've watched The Exorcist hundreds of times, and there is a theory that I think has some weight to it in terms of, was the little girl, Regan, sexually abused? There's a strange relationship with the father who's missing, and Burt Dennings, the director, who, drunk, goes up to her room when no one else is around and ends up, she murders him, twists his head backwards, and throws him out a window. Was he sexually abusing Regan? Now that abuse weakens her mind as she's going into puberty, allowing the demon to enter her, and the exorcism is sort of a form of healing of this sexual trauma. I think there is something to this theory, maybe even if the author, William Peter Blatty, wasn't aware of it. Either way, this movie has depth, and it takes like an hour, half the movie, before anything really supernatural and crazy happens. So it builds a verisimilitude, a realness that pulls you into the everyday, the suburban. There are creepy scenes like in the beginning where McNeil, the actress, is walking. I'm going to walk home today. And the music's going, the classical tubular bells, I think. And she sees it just builds up like almost like a David Lynchian. Beneath the suburbs, there are, with all these churches, there are forces hidden. And it slowly builds up. On top of that, the music is innovative and outstanding. I'm talking, they mixed pigs being slaughtered with, in the background, with thunder, different sounds, and just created this, these psychological attacks, including flashes of, they're not really subliminal because you can see them, but just barely. That sort of innovation. Here, I'll just say it. I believe The Exorcist is one of the greatest movies of all time. So, not just horror movie. Flat out, it's probably, for me, I think it's the best movie ever made. So I get where Schreck is criticizing it, but in a book on the Satanic, I was really disappointed that there wasn't more in depth. He's super dismissive of The Exorcist, and I think there's layers there and fantastic scenes that pull you in. And his criticism, I don't think, is completely valid because it's based on real exorcisms. Aside from some of the less successful, head spinning effects and things like that, you're pulled in so much, or at least if you allow yourself to be. I think it can be frightening in many ways and raise questions. I think it's an important movie. Similarly, but not as much, the Omen is also dismissed as propaganda for Christianity. Okay. I guess regardless, again, I think this movie has a mood, a really creepy mood that comes through. And at least for me, I found it quite fascinating and fun. And there are innovations in that movie, like the woman falling toward the camera. She was falling toward a wall that looked like a floor. Just some very Hitchcockian, strange camera work. I've always loved the grave scene where they're attacked by the dogs in Italy, and you can tell it's a set. It looks fake, but there's sort of I don't know if it was intentional, a nod to the Hammer films, that sort of cheesy 70s. It's not real, but more than real. I think it really captured some feelings there, some moods, and yeah, I think The Omen is excellent. Now, to be fair to Nikolas, I guess one of the, what started this 60s, 70s, 80s, satanic cinema would be Rosemary's Baby. And, he's much more positive with that. And goes into a bit more depth. Now, overall, I would say, that's sort of been my problem with this book, was a little bit of an imbalance in terms of maybe spending too much time on small, movies that maybe aren't worth even mentioning. It's like an 800-page book or so, I think. I do think I'm of two minds. He could. I do appreciate that it's sort of, here's everything and here's all my research, but maybe it would have been a little more of a punch if he reduced some of the books to just a glossary with a couple lines for completeness, instead of devoting several pages to some of these pretty bad films, forgotten and not very important. I think that it would be a different book. This is more encyclopedic, so I'm of two minds of that. I do appreciate that, but I think if I'm criticizing it, it would be that I think some of the more important films to culture, like The Exorcist, should have been greatly expanded, and maybe a quarter of the movies he goes into could have been left out, or at least just mentioned in an appendix. So, overall, this isn't just a book on, movies about the devil, in my opinion. I think there's a layer behind there where if you're actually interested in Satanism or Satan as a figure, behind those movies, as they develop from the beginnings of cinema in the late 1800s to today, it's sort of a black mirror to culture. How Satan is portrayed as time goes on changes. And I think that it's sort of a history lesson showing that evolution. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I'm kind of leaning more toward maybe like 8 out of 10, but I'm not sure if, some of my criticism, I get where he's coming from too. And more is more sometimes, if he was going for that encyclopedic, and people would, could even use this almost as a textbook. It's not quite to that scholarly level. It's a lot of opinion, and some of it's a bit sassy, which is fun. Also, I have never read Schreck's work before, and there are puns, and his personality comes through. It's quite biting and funny. I was laughing, and my wife was like, we're in bed and reading it at night, and she's like, "What are you laughing?" I'm like, "Oh, just a little in joke here." So there's a lot of there's little puns on actors' names and Satan, and little inside jabs and jokes. So it is quite entertaining and very thorough. Personally, I just, I'm a huge Exorcist fan. I don't agree with him to be that dismissive of it. I get where he's coming from, but I think he's being a little contrarian, and it deserved more space, a lot more space, and a little bit more fair. I don't think he was completely fair to The Exorcist, and there's layers in there, and there are many different levels that I think he just he didn't go into, frankly. So that's my big pet peeve, and why for me it's not a 10 out of 10. So 9 out of 10, entertaining, educational. The intro is a real challenge to contemporary Satanists. Check it out. I highly recommend this book. Makes you think. Makes you see the evolution of Satan through cinema and through culture. Highly recommended. Check it out. 9 out of 10. Thanks.